Hello, so I'm Mark Gaal. I'm the director of this year's Pinchgut Opera, which is called The Chimney Sweep, and we are in rehearsals the week before we head into the theatre. The Singspiel itself, I think, is a new form at the time that this piece is being created. There had certainly been a tradition around of something that we might call ballad opera, which had come to continental Europe from the United Kingdom, so from London, had crossed the waters as it were and was performed around Europe, and I think that form had just started to become attractive to audiences. Also in France they have had a tradition at the time known as vaudeville, which is a little bit different to how we might think of vaudeville now, but it was again music and scenes. So Singspiel is a combination of dialogue scenes and then sung musical numbers. That's what makes it different from other forms of opera where things are sung through. And I think the challenge to Salieri was to create something unique, original, an original form, and something that would be seen as unique within Germany or the German-speaking lands, because of course Germany as we know it was not in existence, but across the German-speaking lands the idea was to create something special and unique. And so he drew, I think, from ballad opera, vaudeville, from opera buffa, and created this form, which was quite an original, as I say, offering at the time, and really was the precursor to what we might today call operetta, is the term perhaps that most fits a comic piece such as The Chimney Sweep. Being a comedy, the action and the dialogue that supports the action needs to be very immediate for an audience to really understand and enjoy what's going on. And I think were we to present the whole work in its German language, then I think that would be one layer that we'd have to mediate as an audience member before we got to the heart of what was going on. I think it makes it a little bit trickier. I think with dramatic pieces, it's fine to actually perhaps watch the action and listen to the music, or even read surtitles and build your understanding that way. But I find that comedy moves very, very quickly, and information is given to us very rapidly, and it's important to hear and understand what's being said in your own language. The other thing I could say about doing The Chimney Sweep in English is that, in a sense, we're honouring its original context, which was the challenge that was given to Salieri and Auenbrugger, who wrote the piece, was to create something that the German-speaking peoples would immediately understand. They were not to create a work that was in Italian or French. They were to create something that was in the German language, so in the vernacular. And I suppose we've translated that idea into our own context, and what we're doing is giving our audiences something in their vernacular, so in the very immediate language that is theirs, which is English. Leopold von Auenbrugger, who wrote the story and the libretto for The Chimney Sweep, we know a little bit about him. We know that he was a man of science and a very respected man of medicine. He was a doctor, a famous physician. And it's very interesting to us when we analyse the story, because it has an incredible scientific mind, you can see that, creating it. So the insights into human nature and the intricacies, I suppose, of how people are relating to each other, there's something very mathematical and scientific about them. So whilst the work has this joyous, comedic flavour to it, at the same time bubbling underneath that is something very structured and scientific, and I expect that might be the fact that he was, as I say, a man of science. In the first instance, what's fantastic about Pinchgut is that the repertoire, the choice of repertoire, is unlike any other that audiences can see in Sydney. And I think whilst most opera houses around the world tend to have a repertoire or a standard repertoire for which they're known, and maybe those operas are drawn from what we might call is a standard repertoire. Pinchgut quite deliberately looks at more obscure works. And it's interesting to us that this work is almost 250 years old, and yet it's a premiere, certainly for our audiences. So that as well as the audience taking great delight in the music and the familiarity of classical music at that point in history, every number is completely new to them, and the scenarios and the story and the characterizations are all new. There's nothing familiar about that. Whereas I think if you go to and see the standard repertoire within an opera company, you're actually looking at a work that maybe you've seen several times, albeit in different productions. So what I find interesting as a director is having a work for which there is no precedent. It's not like The Marriage of Figaro or Don Giovanni or Madama Butterfly, where you know and the audience knows what the story is, who the characters are, what's going to happen, and then the experience is much more about how we're going to do it this time. I think with the operas that we choose at Pinchgut, they're complete unknowns. So we are discovering them, I'm discovering them as a director and looking at possibilities, and an audience is discovering them for the first time too. I think that's what makes it exciting. I'd like to think that in this presentation we are definitely honouring the spirit of it, which is joyous and full of comedic situations, but that underlying that is a very, I suppose, cool analysis of human behaviour. So the audience needs to go with the comedy, have a lot of fun with the show, but I think there are moments in the piece itself where aspects of human nature are actually being revealed or investigated. So I think the experience for the audience, as I say, should be a fun one. It's a comedy, and we're not shying away from the comedy. We're very much interpreting the comedy as we think needs to be, so that people will have a great time, but also not at the expense of closing off the other elements that are also a part of the work.